Hi guys, so in today's episode we're going to look at the 10 most common side effects of being on Suboxone. I've been prescribing Suboxone now for just over a decade. This is what I've learned, and at the end I'll also do a quick comparison for you if you're weighing your options between methadone and Suboxone. Let's go. Hi guys, so let's jump right into the most common side effects of Suboxone. Number 1, headache. That was the experience in 42.8% of people. Let's round that up to 43%. The next most common experience, number 2, was pain unspecified. That was reported in 41.7%. And as we go through these, I'm hoping that you'll notice something a little spooky towards the end. It's very unusual and different from most of the other drugs that I review. Number 3 was colds, and that was in about a third of people in 31.6, so we'll round that to 32% of people. Number 4 was insomnia, trouble and difficulty falling asleep, and that was also in almost a third, 29.2% of people. Number 5, back pain. That was noticed in about 28% of users. Next up was constipation in almost a quarter at 24.4% of people on Suboxone. And then number 7 was flu-like symptoms. And that's a big hint to what we're going to discuss in a minute. Flu symptoms, 18.9%, let's call it 19% round up. Number 8, abdominal pain, belly aches. That was noticed in 16.3% of users. Then number 9 was nasal congestion, hint, hint. That was 15.9% of users, almost 16%. So we'll round that up. And then number 10 was sweating. That was in 15.7%, so we'll call that roughly 16%. Now, what I'm hoping that you're noticing is that all of these side effects are also the same side effects that you would experience with opioid withdrawal. See that? So with Suboxone, it's very difficult to distinguish how much of the side effects are really a consequence of Suboxone and how much of them are just the process of weaning off of street opiates onto Suboxone. Remember that in general, most people have to already be in withdrawal to initiate Suboxone. So you're talking right there, all these symptoms could just be a consequence of coming off the opiates in general, especially for someone on really high doses. So in general, my experience has been that if you were to weigh the side effects of being on street drugs versus being on the Suboxone, Suboxone hands down is safer and better for you and better tolerated. It will help you get your life back on track. Now, while not very common, there's 2 other categories that people are always asking. One is weight gain and the other is libido, your drive. So for weight, I didn't see anything about weight gain, but there is a 3% chance from the manufacturer's tabulated materials of weight loss. But again, it's hard to say how much of that is because of Suboxone and how much of that is simply by virtue of the lifestyle that comes with using street opiates. Then for libido, loss of appetite and drive, that is reported in about 1.9%, call it 2% of users. Again, though, it's difficult to ascertain how much of that is life consequences of being on Demerol, hydromorphone, Endocet. All those things in high doses can cause exactly the same features. So again, if you have to weigh the pros and cons, you're definitely better off on Suboxone than using stuff from the street. All right, so let's quickly weigh your options between methadone and Suboxone, which are the 2 most popular opioid use disorder replacement drugs. So first off, the advantages of methadone. 1 is cost. Methadone is an old drug. It was around since before I even started practice. So if you don't have drug coverage, Suboxone is the new kid on the block, so it might cost more. So if you don't have a drug plan or some kind of private insurance, then you might want to consider methadone over Suboxone, just purely based on price. The second thing you want to consider with methadone is that methadone is still an opiate, so it is still an excellent painkiller. For some people, their journey to becoming addicted on opioids actually began by using opioids because they had pain and then they fell off the rails. So for some people, the journey towards addiction to opiates began with legitimate use for chronic pain or some kind of an acute pain. someone injures their back or their ankle, whatever, their physician prescribes an opiate and they lose control and end up off the rails. So if this would be your case, then you definitely might want to consider methadone because yes, it will replace street opioids, but it is still an excellent painkiller as well. So there's 5 things you need to consider about advantages of Suboxone. Number 1, it is safer, much safer than methadone and any of the other opiates. And the reason for that is because it's a partial agonist, and I'll explain that later. But the basic take-home message is that it has something called a ceiling effect or a ceiling threshold, whereas the other opiates do not. So for example, if you take methadone, you get an effect. You take more, you get more of an effect. You keep going, you keep getting more and more of an effect until finally you can stop your heart or stop yourself from breathing. With Suboxone, there's a limit. So once you reach that limit, all the receptors are saturated. It doesn't matter how much more Suboxone you pour in, you're not going to get a further effect. So you're not going to stop your breathing and you're not going to stop your heart. The second advantage of Suboxone, and this is more anecdotal, is a lot of patients on liquid methadone over the years have complained to me about rotting of their teeth, which they feel has something to do with either the methadone molecule or maybe the tang, the acidic drink that it's mixed in, rotting their teeth. So if you're prone to dental caries and cavities and you've had root canals and so forth, that might also be a consideration you want to think of in using Suboxone over methadone. Number 3, it is easier to travel with Suboxone because it's small, easy to secrete, and easy to travel with. With methadone, because it's usually given as a liquid for opioid use disorder, you'd have to be carrying a ton of bottles in your suitcase, which is very inconvenient, especially if the trip is several weeks long. So coming back to safety, because it is so unlikely to be able to overdose on Suboxone, most opioid use disorder treatment groups are much more lenient when it comes to earning carries of Suboxone over methadone or Cadian or any other treatment. And the 5th important distinguishing feature of Suboxone that to me is a huge advantage is it's a gateway to another subcutaneous buprenorphine called Sublocade. So the beauty of Sublocade is you inject it once a month under the skin, then you're free to go. There's no trips to the pharmacy after that. It's very convenient. And because you don't get the ups and downs through the day, it's a continuous release throughout the month. It's also a lot more steady in your bloodstream. So I just generally find that most of my clients, not every single one, but most clients seem to like Sublocade once they get on it. It's freedom and it works really well and you feel very stable on it. So guys, I would recommend Suboxone without hesitation if you or someone you know are suffering with opioid use disorder. It's safe, it's effective, and it works.